for being with us today. Technology is disruptive to all industries, as we know, and especially so in fashion. And we have a really exciting talk today, moderated by Bryan Oknyansky, who is part of the London College of Fashion group. Today's talk is presented by the London College of Fashion. I'll hand it over to you, Bryan.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone, to this very fair Dubai day. This is an interesting panel discussion to prepare for because the future of anything is always kind of cumbersome to discuss, especially in 40 minutes. But it's quite possible that every individual person you talk to about what the future of fashion may be like can have a completely different answer, depending on what perspective you approach it from. Whether you make fashion, communicate fashion, sell fashion, there's any number of ways to approach this. I'll introduce myself, I'll ask you a few questions, I'll introduce the esteemed panelists, and we'll get on to what I believe is going to be a really nice, well-rounded conversation about the future of fashion as 3D printing and wearable tech is concerned. So my name is Bryan, and I'm a designer, an educator, and I founded a footwear brand for 3D printed high heel shoes. And that is the way that I began to engage with the fashion industry from the point of view of technology, advancing technology. I'm going to engage the audience now. So raise your hand if you've seen a 3D printer in person before. Every time I ask that question, 10 more hands go up. That's good. Now raise your hand if you have purchased anything that was 3D printed. We've got some early adopters in the room. Very good. All right. So in the discussion of 3D printing, one of the more central topics, actually before that, why don't we begin with introducing our esteemed panelists? I'm getting overexcited myself. So please.
Hey everyone. I'm Yasmine, the co-designer of the brand Exocet, which was founded 2 years ago, based in Paris. This is the third season that we are showcasing here in the Fashion Forward event, thanks to the Starch Foundation, which opened a lot of doors for us in the Middle East. So basically, we work with leather goods and we mix it with 3D printing to create a completely wearable handbag.
I'm Matthew Drinkwater. I head up the Fashion Innovation Agency at London College of Fashion. And we're a small team which is dedicated to helping designers and brands use technology to help change the way that they're making their collections, so whether that be smart materials or smart processes like 3D printing, change the way that they show their collections as well, so we do a lot of work at London Fashion Week, and particularly with augmented and virtual reality, that's one area that we're doing a lot of work in, and then ultimately how they end up selling their collection. And for most of the designers that show at London Fashion Week, having a website would be a technical innovation. So the bar for selling is kind of low. I think the official statistic is that less than 40% of designers who are showing at London Fashion Week have an e-commerce platform, which may give you an early indication of the gap between technology and fashion. So we're here to try and bring them a little bit closer together.
Hello, everyone. I'm Abdo from Samsung Electronics. I'm responsible for the mobile business in the Middle East and North Africa region, and that would include the mobile portfolio, but also wearables and accessories. I come from an engineering background.
Ciao, good morning. I'm Francesca Gianesin. I'm the Vice President for the Walt Disney Company. I run Disney Consumer Products for Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And in my previous life, I also work in fashion in Italy, as you can guess from my accent, from Milan. So I'm really excited to be here today because with my background, I really mix entertainment with fashion. And what we will discuss today about 3D printing and wearable technologies, how to get the experience to our consumers to the next level. So I'm really looking forward to hear what my colleagues will talk about today, and very welcome to have any questions, I guess, from the audience. It's a great pleasure and honor to be here.
Perfect. I hope you'll agree that we have a really well-rounded panel, representatives of large companies, representatives of startup brands, representatives from the academic circles. So to lead into the conversation, when we discuss 3D printing, very typical discussions focus on the amount of time it takes to prototype something and how that time has shortened, and how conceivably anyone can become a manufacturer. And whether or not it seems like a new concept to you, the concept of being able to offer each individual customer a custom experience while they shop. When we consider wearable technology, what we see in the early days is embedding wires and computer chips into our clothing and accessories, and as well as other life cycle accessories. We like to talk about how wearable technology can evolve the way we connect with the world around us. And ultimately, wearable technology is pushing the limits of hardware and software and how that applies in the realm of lifestyle. So I'd like to lead in to ascertain what 3D printing and wearable tech holds for the future of fashion by just asking all the panelists, what are each of your experiences with 3D printing and wearable technology? Yasmine?
So basically, how it started was we had something in mind, like a specific design that we really wanted to create. So we started experimenting with different techniques like laser cutting plexiglass, laser cutting leather, sewing it together to create this object that we wanted. And none of these techniques was working out, and nothing was giving us the right, nothing was delivering the right quality or the right. It was too long or too hard or it took too much time, so it was going to be too expensive. So then we decided to use 3D printing because it was the only way we could translate this idea. And then after we started using it, this is when we realized that it was really limitless what we could do with 3D printing, and it became a part of our identity. So that's my experience with 3D printing.
Matt, do you work at the innovation agency directly with 3D printing and wearable tech?
Yeah, we do. So we do a little bit of work with 3D printing, but primarily our focus is on smart materials and enabling designers to use technology in a way that's never been experimented with before. So I guess where we are at with wearable technology is at a stage where I think a consumer expectation is that what they see on the catwalk could be translated into something which is real and purchasable. We're still a long way away from that. I think the opportunities are incredibly exciting. The idea that your clothes could be a vessel that you might be able to download content into your clothing, change the pattern, change the design, change the size. These are all areas that we're looking at, but effectively what needs to happen to enable that is that we need to create a supply chain. And at the moment, the big gap between not just designers and their experience of technology and how to implement that within garments is also where on earth do those two supply chains cross over? Because at the moment, there are one or two places in the world where it's beginning to happen, but it's still very early days for that. And also, I think the bigger question, and probably one that I always like to throw out to the audience, is what would you want smart clothing to look like? What do you want it to do? I think nobody's really answered a question on exactly what is it that smart clothing would do. Do you want it to light up? There are lots of LED dresses out there. I'm sure there are some consumers who would want that. But if we are enabling our clothes to talk to each other, we're perhaps opening up a whole new way of thinking within the industry of what the function of our clothes are. And when you talk about function within fashion design, there are some challenges to be overcome in that.
I mean, for me, I'll give the perspective on a commercial level. So we've seen an explosion of the overall market when it comes to wearable technology. Today, globally, the market is assumed to be around $15 billion, extremely sizable. And the expectation is that will continue to grow quite aggressively in the coming future. Not as fast as mobiles, but it's technically assumed the next frontier. However, we've seen through multiple iterations of, for example, a smartwatch that we have launched in the market, that it's not as easy as expected to succeed. And really the question here is, what's it actually for? I mean, what is the functionality of this technology? And if you compare it to a mobile, obviously the answer on mobile is extremely clear. However, if you wear a smartwatch, is it only about telling time and getting notifications? So really the challenge is not only from the manufacturing and innovation side, but how can we work together as an ecosystem and different partners, so all the innovators in the room, how can we transform a piece of hardware into a service or into something that is functional and ultimately has the right to live in its own by itself. So I think that's one of the key questions that we try to ask ourselves and work with different partners to try to enable, I would say, a solution for the consumer, whoever wants it, either on a fashion side or not. That would.
Yeah. And how about Disneyland? Any use for 3D printing or really cool textiles that light up and things like that?
Actually, there's so much today because Disney has been for a long time a user of technology for entertainment. So if I stay just focused on the 3D printing, I would say that this new technology is really helping you to give shape to the dream that you have. So for instance, our work is to watch movies and then try and understand what consumers will want to buy. And Disney is not only for children, it's also for adults. Because movie like, the Star Wars, the Marvel, or even the Pixar movies talks to every child that is in every one of us. So I give you this example. For instance, we wanted to create women's shoes for a Marvel movie called Avengers that we launched last year. And we partnered with Gianesin, and we wanted to create an Iron Man shoes. Then, of course, you have an idea of what you want your shoes to be, linked to the character that you want to represent. But then the issue is that how you're going to be perfect on that. And then with 3D printing, this technology enables you to give the shape that you think is right and true to the character. Same things for Irregular Choice, who has launched a collection of beautiful Alice in Wonderland shoes that I was very tempted to wear today. But then I opted for a Minnie and a Snow White actual attire, because it's more princessy. These shoes, Irregular Choice is famous because they have a heel that is shaped. So they made this beautiful Alice in Wonderland shaped heel. And without the 3D printing, believe me, it would have been impossible for them to really be true to the character and create something that was in line with the vision that the designer had. So for me, 3D printing and wearable technology are really enablers. They enable us to get our dream to come true in physical products that stay true to the vision.
Lots of interesting points to go off of there. But what's really interesting to me is that 3D printing is hyped up as this technology that is, you can conceivably do anything. Anything is possible. Okay, now, as users of the technology, the answer to that isn't that no, it's not, but it's also not just a clear yes. But I want to ask the panelists, do you believe that anything is possible just because there are technologies like 3D printing available for use?
Anything is possible, but there are a lot of restrictions. Like, you can do anything that you have in mind, but you always have to modify it in a way so that you're able to print it. You have to have a certain thickness, you have to have a certain, depends on what you want to do. For example, from my experience for bags, we always have to, we try to make it as solid as possible and as thick as possible for some parts, because if not, it's going to be breakable. And we are using it for a final product, not a prototype. So we face very often these difficulties where we have to change the way we imagine this specific design to be. And yeah.
So you can't just use the same materials that fashion is used to in making its garments. You have to approach new materials. You have to design them differently. Is that your experience?
Yeah, I mean, we are limited to the material and also to the size of the 3D printing, because you have a certain size that you need to respect and a certain thickness that you need to respect. And if it doesn't work, you have to redesign everything on the program to edit it and change it to be able to print it. So basically, it's just the restrictions that you have.
And could you conceivably see 3D printed fashion products kind of flood the market today? Do you think they would compete with fashion products made in traditional methods? This is open to all the panelists.
Yeah, I mean, I'll jump in and say, right now, no, that's not going to happen. I think what you see on the catwalk and some of the incredible dresses made by Iris van Herpen are an incredible showpiece which begin to demonstrate what could be possible. But you know, I'll go back to your previous question on is anything possible? Well, it is, but designers will never get there if we don't educate them on what could be possible. And we've done so many projects with designers at Fashion Week where we have designers over here, coders, engineers over here. There is an enormous gap. And until we begin to start working with designers at a much earlier stage on educating them on how to actually work with these materials, how to work with coders, how to embed a sensor into your clothing, then we're not going to make big leaps forward. You know, we did an amazing project at the college last year. We launched a new lab called the Digital Anthropology Lab, and the students there worked on a t-shirt, a smart wardrobe project where they embedded a sensor into a t-shirt and sent the t-shirt out across London. And the t-shirt was pulling data, location data, and then linking it to pollution indexes. So as the t-shirt went across London, you could see how dirty it was becoming. Very. Mm-hmm. And I guess what it was playing into is a wider Internet of Things process, but a beginning to change understanding of how do we live our lives every day? Where could we use technology to make a difference? Do I actually know how dirty my clothes are? You know, custom and culture tells me that I go home, I probably have to wash this. But is that real? What's that based on? Just ideas? And I think, you know, we need people to start using technology, experimenting, iterating, beginning to just push product out, test. The opportunities there are endless and actually are incredibly affordable to do. So yeah, let's go make stuff. That is where we will begin to show where the possible could be achieved.
Do you think that the market asks for innovation with technologies like 3D printing and wearable technology, or do you think that the innovation precedes the market demand? How do you feel about that?
I mean, this is our fourth smartwatch iteration. I think, transparently, our first one wasn't as good as the one that we have today. And in order to have really a good sense of the market and the consumer experience, we do commercialize products that are new to the market and test and understand from the consumer their feedback. So overall, that is a strategy to design and to launch overall innovation, but quickly reiterate whatever opportunities you see, and improve it in the next generation. It's viable for us because as a big company, we have a significant amount of engineers and R&D that invest their time in this. However, I think this can be further accelerated, and I'll add to Matthew's point, is that you need different partners to engage to really make the best out of it. So we have a bioprocessor chip that Yeah, we're well technically almost launching it in the market, and it reads different biometrics across the human body, and it's integrated into a garment. The question is, if it's integrated into garment and you get biometric data, what do you do with it, right? And how can that change, for example, the garment that you're wearing? So if you're hot, or does the garment open up more, or does it, the seams open up, etc. So that kind of solution needs multi-industry discussion in order for it to, I think, to become more successful and to be commercialized.
So you can't do it alone. Samsung can't. Do you think it's appropriate for Samsung to want to kind of internalize all of the innovations, or is it essential that, I guess another way to ask what I'm trying to ask is, where do the experts come from? The wearable technology experts, the 3D printing experts, do they come from fashion schools?
So, if first, the
You
first
have to
answer is
reach
no.
out,
So
yeah.
we can't do it all by ourselves. We believe in an open collaboration with all the stakeholders, and that's why you can innovate in fashion, you can innovate in any other industry. The point is that sessions like these are a very good example of people having ideas, and then they get inspired by a certain technology or hardware, and then they come and say, okay, maybe I can turn this into something, and then this is where the discussion happens. Or there's R&D, and there's universities, of course, that's a different, another example. But an easy one is the one that we have a forum like this.
What about the consumer experience with products that have been made with 3D printing? Matt, you mentioned you see a lot of garments or costume work on the catwalk, but that doesn't necessarily translate, and we mostly see accessories on the shelves because they're hard goods and not soft. But as consumers, and I hope I'm not misspeaking for all of us here, but are we ready to see in a marketplace the things we're used to seeing potentially, but made in different materials and made in different ways? Do you have experience with the consumer experience of products that are made that have embedded technology in them, whether it's a bracelet or some other accessory?
Yeah, we've done a ton of projects which have ended up going to market, from wireless charging trousers that we did with Microsoft, which was a fun thing to do, and then a smart belt, which went to market through a crowdfunding campaign and raised about $80,000. There is genuine demand for wearable technology, and for it to be done in a way which is actually something that you would want to wear. And what was interesting about a project that we did with Disney a couple of years ago with a designer called Richard Nickel, a dress based on Tinkerbell, that was widely regarded as one of the most successful pieces of wearable technology. I think Forbes described it as the first piece of truly beautiful wearable technology. That dress had something like 200 million impressions on social media and has become this poster child for wearable technology. And it was the first time that people had seen something on a catwalk which evoked emotion. But the only criticism that we really picked up from that is that you couldn't buy it, that it wasn't real. And I go back to that consumer expectation. If they see something on the catwalk, you want to buy it. And yet what's missing is a supply chain to support that. So there are enormous challenges. And consumer expectation, you mentioned before, anyone who watched the latest Apple event where they launched their new iPhone, this is the latest technology squeezed into an even smaller phone. It's an amazing stuff. The consumer reaction was, that's not new. There is enormous expectation for every 3 months, every 6 months, something new to be delivered. And that's a challenge.
But I think that at the end, what makes this technology to advance is the fact that we are all trying to really follow the consumers, and there are some trends that are so important. personalization and customization is so important, especially for fashion freaks, as I guess all we are. We don't like be dressed the same way that everyone else is. We want to be unique. This is the, why we go in at fashion catwalk, to be inspired and see new things. And for instance, the 3D printing allow us to do unique pieces that, follow the consumers in their research of uniqueness and be personalized. We have done with Adidas beautiful project. Again, on this time on Star Wars, through their app that is called MyFlux. So the consumers could go on this app and through the web personalize all their shoes. So usually when you go in a shop, you can have a certain choice of shoes of the same kind of type. But then through, again, technology, in this case with Adidas, we gave them access to almost 60 different creative artworks. So consumer could come up with 60 different choices of shoes, all personalized with their taste, with their beloved characters. So the key is to follow the consumers and enable then the technology to be advanced. Because one issue that we have with 3D now, printing, is that we cannot go in mass production. Then the question is, do we really want high fashion to be mass? We could discuss for hours. But I think it will come eventually. I've seen the experience in bedding, for instance, where only a few years ago people were saying that this digital printing was used only for a niche. Now they have developed wonderful machine on digital printing that can really create so many volumes and meters of bedding textiles. So I'm sure we're gonna get there, and we will be more and more able to give this personalization to the consumers that want it. And in terms of wearable technology, one of the latest example that we have done in Disney is in Disney World, where we have produced this called Disney Magic Band. Is a smart rubber wristband that contains a RFID system and a radio that connects the band to all the sensors in the park. So then through this band, by the way, the technology is so well embedded in that you really do not see anything. It's just a beautiful rubber Mickey and Minnie band. This is another important thing. I mean, it's key that technology is not visible. It's the invisible design that you have embedded into the garment, whether it's a bracelet or of course, a suit. But in the case of the wristband, then you can choose the attraction that you want to do. You can open your door. You can pre-choose the food that you want to eat, and everything is done through an app that says, is like My Disney app, and everything is personalized to you. And that band unlock a magic experience, whether if, in case you are an adult, of course, is service, because everything becomes so easy. You don't have to carry with you anything, any credit card, anything, everything will be in your band. But for children, that is amazing. I mean, a child that is in love with Cinderella, for instance, and their parents put on the app that, my daughter loves Cinderella, then in the park, they might have a chance to meet with Cinderella, and she will call the guest by her name and say, I know you love me, Susan, or whatever. Or if they get into a Disney store and pass through the Magic Castle, Cinderella will appear because it's connected to the wristband. So again, technology is an enabler. Enable us to have personalized products, enable us to have magical experience. I think about one that I use at the, now I get very personal, but I'm a big Star Wars fan, even if I have a mini dress. So, for instance, we have done this wonderful premiere. It was the European premiere of Star Wars in London, and I wanted to wear wonderful shoes because I'm in love with shoes. And so the shoes that I selected, they have the heels shaped as a lightsaber. then what happens is that they have some technology, and Matthew knows well, is already laughing, but they lights up. So at night,
amazing.
during this premiere, my shoes were lighting up, voo, 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 and then there was a sound. They were doing like, like a lightsaber. It was so cool. And I get so many photos of my shoes. I was so happy. Everyone thought I was completely crazy. Instead, that was my stuff. I mean, the emotional connection that I had to Star Wars and to my shoes, and what technology, enabled me to do it, to be very proud of my swooshy.
They're
Heel.
the best shoes.
Yeah, their shoes are amazing. I know that.
I'd put a pair of those high heels.
Did you try them on, Matt? Very good.
I tried to get them off her feet.
No, it was not. The prototype it was, but then to go into mass production, they had to go through the normal route. But I think that the more we will be able to improve our technology, the more 3D printing will allow us to go a little bit more mass than use it only for limited quantities. But it started with 3D printing. Without the 3D printing, again, the designer would never be able to really find the right dimensions and sizes, and even the lightsaber is not such an easy thing. So to create the perfect shoes and then to go mass, because they are sold everywhere, you still need to go through a normal route.
We've heard that from the point of view of a designer, and you've just referenced this, you have an idea in your head for the exact product you want to make. And if you needed to use traditional modes of manufacturing, there might be severe limitations that would require you to change your original vision.
Absolutely.
And so you put in the time and effort to collaborate with people who know how to design for 3D printers. Okay, and we also hear that it's incredibly important to engage the customer. Not just to say that the added value is simply the added technology or the way something was made, but how you can interact with the customer. So if we're thinking of the building blocks to the future of fashion, where do you think the priority is? Is the burden on the shoulders of the producers of fashion, the people who sell fashion, the people who communicate fashion? What would you say is the roadblock to the future of fashion if we break it up in that way? Do designers lead?
I didn't get the question.
Do designers lead the path to the future of fashion? Do publishers lead it? What do you think the stepping stones are, the priorities to get there?
I mean, I think that the fashion industry will be the last mover in that space. If you could see all of the advancements in wearable technology are being led by health and well-being, where there is an identifiable need to integrate technology into those garments. If you talk about aesthetic and creating clothes to do some kind of function, to go through all of the processes to actually embed computing into your clothing, I'm going to need to see a real need to do that, because look, get a circuit board in, you need a battery. Battery life, currently, horrible. You need a connector. Connector's still kind of big. There is a long, long way to go in that. But I genuinely believe that it will happen, and whether that's going from RFID just in the tag of your clothing. And I think, again, we're hamstrung by this need to identify what is fashion. There are so many different elements that designers need to figure out what's right for their consumer. But I saw a study last night that the World Economic Forum estimates that by 2025, 10% of the global population will be wearing smart, connected clothing. So we're 2016. Where can you go buy smart, connected clothing right now? Anyone know that? Anyone seen any smart clothing that you can go to the shops and buy?
Then do people really need that?
There you go.
Or is it more for the aesthetic of it, if you're using it?
Yeah. Until somebody can identify that need,
Yeah.
then that industry is not going to grow. And I think one of the big challenges is going to be around scale, and particularly at a luxury end, there's always going to be a challenge around scale. And we haven't even mentioned the opportunity that virtual will create for designers, both in the way that they make and how they show, and also how they connect to consumers. I think virtual has an enormous part to play in that.
I mean, for me, technology integrated into fashion is not the end in mind. I think that's not the objective, and that's why the industry has been doing fine. I mean, the way that we see technology enabling or engaging with fashion so far effectively has been really in the communication, in the content, in the media platforms, consumers engaging and consuming fashion content, leading designers to, pushing designers to innovate. And I think this is where the current dynamic is. However, where technology can help, I think, overall is the innovation in the product itself. I think Yasmine and Exocet is a very good example. It's a very nice idea of a hybrid. So yes, there's an understanding of high manufacturing costs if you want to create an entire product out of 3D printing. However, a nice idea here is that you actually integrate 3D printing into a product and make that product stand out. So that's a very interesting way, and
yeah, we use it as a tool to create something, not because it's technology.
Right, exactly.
We're not using it because it's useful. We're using it because of what it can do, to what it can show.
Yeah, I think that's a great example of how an innovation can help a brand and then commercially go to the market in a good way. So again, we've seen there's also a barrier of price per product, so per item. And in high-end fashion, maybe that's not a barrier, but again, it needs to be meticulously crafted. It needs to be beautiful. And I don't think the current manufacturing process can generate something like that right now. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's my current understanding. However, if you go to market, you need to go to market in a commercially viable way, even though the innovation is not confirmed by the consumer. So I'm also not very, let's say, encouraged to say the consumer will decide the innovation. No, I don't think that's always the case, or should be the case. But you should be, when you go to market, you give a proposition that makes sense, that you can enable the consumer to purchase it. And whatever innovation that is.
So let's work towards getting some questions from the audience. I'll ask you just to give me a few words on your hopes for the future of fashion, with the aid of technologies like 3D printing and wearable technology, and then we'll open it up to the audience.
There's something that I really hope for, is that we have more options with the material that they can use for 3D printing. Because from the experience that I have, most consumers always ask about the material of the object, and then when we tell them it's SLS plastic, they get a bit. They're not sure because they're not ready to open up to plastic. I don't know why, even though it doesn't look like plastic. So I hope, it also would be nicer to have other kinds of material like rubber or something that looks a bit more luxurious, maybe. Yeah.
I would say I'm incredibly optimistic, simply because there's such amazing work being done. But what I would urge everybody, because this is the future, look at the number of people here who have an interest in this field, is go and collaborate, co-create, get together, make product, iterate. That is the future. That is how we will make a difference.
You took my point,
Oh,
but no, I mean, again, I don't think as a tech brand we can have a right to, let's say, play in this industry by ourselves. It doesn't make any sense. So for us, it's about collaboration. It's about innovation from the industry and how we can bring that or create something that is great, that adds value to the consumer, or value, not only functional value but even emotional and emotional value. So it doesn't have to be functional; it could also be aesthetically good. But that discussion is, I think, still in its early stages. And maybe here on a regional level, we don't have the same impact that we would have centrally, but still we can deliver the message, and we can work together to create something that ultimately can go to market and can be successful.
And for me, it's just, technology needs to help us to design the experience for our consumers, especially in fashion. Even when you buy a dress, now think about haute couture Dior. You're not buying a dress, you're buying that experience when you wear that dress. Is the experience that you're looking for. When you buy something Stella and Adidas, we were discussing on the car coming here, is a different kind of experience. It's not a product, it's an experience you're looking for. So I'm sure that technology will help us more and more to design experiences. And there's another very important thing that it does. Provide solutions. Example, I'm a runner, very lazy one, I have to say. So there are garments that when you run, they charge your iPhone. Fantastic. That provides solution, because if I run for 10 kilometers, which is not my case, usually it's around the corner and come back. But if you run, yeah, that if you run long time, you just can charge your phone and you are so happy. The other solution now it comes to mind, for instance, we have done a collaboration with Kiabi, Pure Mass. Kiabi is an apparel retailer in France. Actually, it's a European apparel retailer. And we have done 2 pajamas, Princess and Cars for children. But these pajamas were connected to an app through a microchip. So when you just zooming on the Princess and Cars logo, so think about a mom that needs to put to bed their children. So you zoom with your smartphone or with your iPad on the Princess and Cars logo, and you immediately get into a content of new stories, bedtime stories for your children. So you don't happen to have a book with you, you don't remember the Cinderella story, which shame on you, but if happens, then you just scan it with your smartphone and you have your Cars and Princess stories for your children there. Link to the garment that you bought. This is service. So I really want to see a future where we all have our customized and personalized products, and this is what 3D printing can do. We all have our magic experience, and we all have a solution to our problems. Then there's one thing that I have to say, because I'm very consumer-centric, try to be consumer-centric, but I had the fortune to meet Steve Jobs, and I remember that he really didn't believe on consumer research at all. He believes that consumers do not know what they want until you provide him a new need, and that was the iPod. We were all going with my age, we're all going with the Walkman. Thank you so much. With the Walkman, we were not even thinking about the iPod. So yes, it's true, we need to be consumer focused, but we need to be innovative and creative and challenge the status quo and come up with that idea that consumers don't even think about, and give them a new solution for a need that they didn't even know they had. This is what I call pure innovation, and I would love technology to help us to follow the consumers in this way.
Wonderful. So now that Fran has raised her voice to us
Sorry.
please. We're opening up questions to the audience. Yes. We will have a microphone coming around.
Hi, my name is Zaid Farouki, and I actually own, and I'm the founder of my own brand over here, which is located in D3. I do wearable art. So I'm a painter that turned into a fashion designer, and everything is hand painted by myself. And so my clients actually wear the pieces, but then they have them in their homes, part of their art collection. So they're shown outside on mannequins, on display. And I've had integrated into actually wearable accessories, which are actually sculptures, but actually can be worn whenever they want to go out to a certain event. I've managed to create a certain type of fabric completely made out of paint to coexist with my designs. And I'm actually doing some accessories with 3D printing. And I was wondering if I may ask you, the STEAM panel had mentioned more than once that we need to collaborate. And I'm a person that's very open to collaboration since everything is experimental and my clients only get one of pieces. So no two clients in the world can actually have the same exact piece. So as for the panels such as the London College of Fashion, Samsung, and Disney, how can we as people who are willing to innovate and create all this, how can we be in contact with a database such all three that carry or willing to, because not everyone what we're looking at is that people globally, there's only a few that are willing to work on this. Not so many people are accepting it. So we're not looking at it as a region or a country, we're looking at it globally. So if those people were to come together, how can we get in touch with London College of Fashion, with Disney and Samsung to actually to collaborate with each other in the future?
I'm right here. So, I think what's wonderful about meetings like this is the opportunity for us to begin to build those sorts of networks. So, whenever I'm asked about collaborations, you're surrounded in a room of people who have similar interests. Look to your peers, look around you. Of course we're here and we can have a chat afterwards, but there's any number of people that you can work with. And I think the desire to see collaborative work is really high. So I think the opportunities are actually not so difficult to make happen.
On a